Have you ever stopped to think about why, even though you work hard every single day, it feels like money just never sticks around? Why you wake up early, solve problems, handle pressure, get genuinely exhausted, and still reach the end of the month with that strange feeling that you haven't moved forward at all, as if all your effort had been swallowed by something invisible. And the worst part is, not even when money is missing, it's when you start to have a little, and instead of feeling relief, you feel fear of spending, fear of losing it, fear that something might happen and it will disappear. And then I want to ask you a question that may feel uncomfortable, but answer it honestly in your own mind. Why is it that when you have nothing, you suffer, but when you start to have a little, you suffer even more? It sounds strange, but this is happening to a lot of people, and maybe to you too, because there is a point in the middle of the financial journey that no one explains. A place where you are no longer at zero, but you are not safe either. And that is the most dangerous place of all, because that is where anxiety grows, where every decision feels heavy, where you start overthinking before spending anything. And without realizing it, the money that should bring you peace starts bringing you tension, because now you have something to lose, and your brain does not interpret that as safety. It interprets it as risk, as a threat, as something that could disappear at any moment. So it keeps you in a constant state of alert. And when you live on alert, you do not build anything. You only try not to lose. And that completely changes the way you make decisions, because you start avoiding too much. Or in some moments you do the opposite and spend everything all at once just to relieve that internal pressure. And then comes the guilt, the regret, the feeling of being trapped in the same cycle. And then you start questioning whether there is something wrong with you, because it does not seem possible to work so hard and not see results. But the problem is not your effort. It is the way everything was structured without you realizing it, because they taught you that getting rich means working more, earning more, and spending less. But no one taught you how to deal with the middle of the journey. No one taught you how to get out of this constant state of financial tension. And that is why so many people work their whole lives and never feel like they've arrived anywhere, because they are always surviving, never building. And there is a point where that changes. It is not magic. It is not luck. It is when you leave survival mode and enter building mode. And that does not happen when you make a lot of money. It happens when you create a foundation that takes your brain out of that state of alert. Because while you are worried all the time, every decision becomes a burden. Every choice becomes a risk. Every expense becomes a doubt. And that drains your energy without you realizing it. Now think about your routine. How many times have you spent money just to ease a bad day? How many times have you avoided looking at your account because you knew it would make you feel bad? How many times have you promised yourself that you would do things differently next month and did not manage to? That is not a lack of discipline. That is mental exhaustion. It is a badly built system, because when everything depends on your willpower, eventually you lose. Everyone loses. And that is why your work is not making you wealthy, because you are spending too much energy just to keep yourself afloat, and there is no energy left to build. And the most common mistake happening without you realizing it is that your money arrives with no defined purpose. It comes in and turns into one single block. And from that point on, every decision becomes an internal negotiation, a conflict, a drain, and that creates room for emotional decisions. And emotional decisions with money almost always go wrong. So what really starts to change the game is not earning more. It is deciding where the money will go before it arrives. Because when you define it in advance, you eliminate doubt, you reduce the number of decisions, you take the weight out of the moment, and that changes everything. Because now you do not depend on being motivated. The right thing is already defined, and when the money comes in, it already has a path. One part is not touched. It is protection. It is what will give you stability. Another part pays your bills. Another part is for you to live without guilt. And another part is for unexpected situations, because they always happen. And when that is clear, money stops being chaos and starts having a function. And when it has a function, it starts to stay. And when it starts to stay, something changes inside you, because you stop feeling like you are always starting over. You start feeling like you are moving forward, even if slowly, and that lifts an enormous weight, because the feeling of being stuck is what wears you down the most. But here there's an important detail that holds a lot of people back, and that is impatience. Because in the beginning it feels too small, too slow, like it will not make any difference. And that is exactly where people give up, because they are used to intensity, too big changes, too quick results. But what really works is the opposite. It is simple, repeated, silent, and that is what builds real results. Not in an explosive way, but in a solid way, And that requires something that few people accept at first, which is stopping the search for perfection and starting with what is possible, because you do not need to get everything right now. You just need to begin, even if it is with little, because the amount is not the most important thing. What matters is consistency. And for that consistency to exist, you need to remove as many decisions from the path as possible, automate whatever you can, because everything that depends on you remembering or controlling yourself will fail at some point. So the more automatic it is, the lighter, the more sustainable. And at the same time, you need to accept that you will make mistakes. You will have messy months. You will spend where you should not. And that cannot be a reason to quit. Because when there is a system, the mistake stops being a disaster and becomes an adjustment. And that completely changes the way you deal with money, because you stop living in fear of making mistakes and start learning from what happens. And along with that comes something you may not have felt in a long time, which is clarity. Because when you start observing without judgment, you understand your patterns, you understand where the money is slipping away, you understand what needs to change, and that gives you real control, not that heavy kind of control that drains you, but a light kind of control that organizes your mind. And when your mind is organized, your decisions improve. And when your decisions improve, your money starts to respond. And then for the first time, your effort starts to show, not because you started working more, but because you stopped losing the results of what you are already doing. And that is what separates those who stay stuck from those who start moving forward. It is not luck, it is not talent, it is structure. It is stopping the need to depend on your own strength all the time and creating something that works even on bad days. Because they will exist. And when that system starts running, when money has a destination, when unexpected events do not turn into a crisis, when mistakes do not knock you down, you begin to feel peace, not because there are no problems, but because you know how to deal with them. And that peace is what allows growth, because now you are no longer surviving. You are building, and in the end, that is what changes everything. It is not the amount in your account. It is the mental freedom of not living in constant tension, of looking at money and not feeling fear, of making decisions without weight, of knowing that your life does not depend on a perfect month. And when you reach that point, work stops being only effort and becomes the construction of something real, something that remains, something that grows, something that finally takes you out of the place where you have always been. So if all of this made sense to you, if at any moment you recognized yourself here, do not let this pass like just another video you watched and forgot. Use this, start simple. Adjust little by little, but start. And if you made it this far, comment the word foundation, so I know you understood what was really missing. And go ahead and leave a like. Subscribe to the channel, because that is what shows that this kind of content needs to keep reaching more people who are living exactly what you are living today.